Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part one of three of simple crafts with household items to grow our calm and our fun. So I'm Mrs. Rubin, for those of you who are new, and I am a mindfulness teacher who specializes in teaching fun ways that we can grow our smart parts to help us to pay attention for longer and stronger, but also help us to savor the good moments a little bit longer. And so today I'm actually here because we're going to be working on what I like to call mindful drawing. So, over the past couple of weeks and maybe even months, I've been exploring some different fun ways that I can practice mindfulness, but also practice it in a fun way that not only helps me to kind of calm down when I need to, but also to be a little bit more creative and also to be able to kind of create some tools that can help me when I'm bored or can help me when I'm feeling kind of upset or uncomfortable and I just need some time to reset and recharge my battery. So today, what we're going to be working on is we're going to be working on doing what I like to call some mindful drawing. And so that mindful drawing is actually going to look something similar to this. Now, right here is actually what the finished product will look like if you complete all three videos. This is the first one, and so we're going to be completing a mindful drawing. So I'm going to show us actually how to do this today. But first, I want to start off sharing with you something that is called Zentangles or Zentangles. And so I learned of Zentangles a couple of years ago, which are basically were created by a mom and a dad who wanted to create some kind of relaxing types of mindful drawing. And so when we talk about this word, Zentangle, tangle is really just a small space. And so this book does a good job of showing you what that small space typically looks like a little square or a shape like a circle, which is what we're going to be doing today. And then filling that space with a pattern. And so this book I use often, as you'll see. This one has a theme for under the sea. And so not only does it teach you some different Zentangles that you can do, it then gives you a spot to be able to complete it yourself. And so by practicing and learning how to do Zentangles, you too can actually make some really beautiful designs by creating and repeating the same types of shapes and patterns over and over and over again. So part one that we're going to be doing is going to actually be creating this type of drawing. So as I go ahead and switch my camera here, today what you're going to need is a piece of paper. You're also going to need something round to trace. And this is where I feel like lids can be really helpful, whether it's a lid to a container. You can also use a cup that's not too breakable if you feel comfortable with that. And you're also going to need a pencil and maybe some coloring utensils. And so I am going to kind of go through this kind of quickly, but you can feel free to pause this at any point that you need to gather materials or to work a little bit longer on a certain part. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to take our piece of paper and we're going to begin by using our pencil and kind of tracing around the outside of it so that when we remove it, we have a circle. Now, for the design that I did here, you're going to notice that what I did was I actually started with a circle in the center of my picture, or a circle in the center of my circle. And you can just eyeball it as to what looks best for you. And then because we know that drawing lines, whether rounded or curvy or straight, have been proven to help us relax and calm down, what I'm going to do is start off kind of making sort of a flower pattern around that center circle. And then I'm going to start this process of repeating that flower petal design by filling in where we see these mountains or spaces in between. So I'm kind of building on here, filling in the spaces. Now you'll notice that it's super helpful when you're doing this to start spinning your paper so that you can easily fill in the spaces in between, or as I like to say, kind of filling in the mountains where maybe you would see a beautiful sunset, or you can kind of see this kind of flower that is starting to form by doing this. And so right here, you're paying attention on purpose to the present moment and what you are doing, which is mindfully drawing. And what makes it mindful is that you are trying your best to simply pay attention to what it feels like to draw. Maybe kind of noticing how the pencil feels on the paper. Maybe kind of noticing what it feels like to watch this design kind of display itself on your paper. And then maybe you notice those moments of pause where you kind of step back a little bit and decide what you're going to do next. Maybe you decide to turn your paper the opposite way or add something to the design in a different spot, start working in a different direction. And so this repeated pattern, although it really doesn't look like much with just one of these shapes, really starts to kind of take on a whole new shape and really kind of intricate design the more that you layer it. And so what you will need to kind of decide at some point is when you want to stop, when you feel as though your design has filled the space, or maybe you are making the conscious decision to kind of leave some space here, or maybe you're going to decide, like I did here, to kind of continue that pattern to fill the entire space. And again, the bigger circle you use, the more space you're going to have to fill. So if you want to make a smaller space or not be filling that space for as long of a period of time, you might want to use a smaller circle. But in my suggestion, if you're going to go on to make this spin drum, which is part 3 of this video, you don't want to use a circle that is much smaller than about 3 inches in diameter. And that's when we're measuring across a circle. Okay, so in order to be able to make the spin drum, this is something that you're going to want to have about 3 inches, which is, I would say, this shape here is probably the smallest that I would do if I was creating this to be a little bit smaller. Okay, and so you can kind of play around with that. And if you are going to continue and fill in your entire space with your mindful drawing, then I suggest that you pause the video now and continue working on your drawing. Now, keeping in mind that you can continue with this same pattern, you can also, if you want to, continue with other types of patterns as well. And so something that's kind of fun that you might decide you want to do is once you've filled some of that space and kind of created this intricate flower pattern, you actually might want to go ahead and start adding another type of lined pattern to it as well. Essentially, when it comes to mindful drawing, there is no right or wrong way to do it. You can honestly do whatever you think is best, and kind of keeping in mind that as you're doing it, you're simply paying attention on purpose to the action of drawing and kind of noticing what that experience is like for you. You might decide at some point that you really like it or that maybe you want to do something different, which is why before you jump into this, if this isn't something that you feel comfortable with or you want to practice, you can easily just go ahead and actually trace multiple circles onto a piece of paper and begin kind of playing around with this mindful drawing. So as you kind of continue your design, like I said, if you're not done yet and ready for the next step, I'm going to advise you to pause the video. And then when you're ready and your design is completed, and you're ready for the next step, you can press play. Now, for those of you who are still with me here, it's time for the next step, which is to add some color. So there is nothing, again, that is right or wrong about the colors that you want to choose. But again, because I like to, this is going to be a tool that can help us to calm ourselves down or to relax ourselves. They tell us that colors like blue and green are really good colors for promoting the feeling of calm and relaxation. It's often why if you ever visit a spa or go on vacation, and also bedrooms are typically painted in these calming colors because that's where we sleep and that's where we go to relax. So as you pick your colors, again, I'm just reminding you that there is no right or wrong way to do this. And because I had the opportunity to kind of work on this before, what I discovered that I enjoy doing as I'm adding color to this is to actually make my center circle one that incorporates all the colors that I'm going to be using. So again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can absolutely do what you want to. And then you can begin to add some color to your design. Now, you might notice that I'm doing something a little different for this one than I did for the last one, because for the last one, I colored in my little flower pattern shapes. And this one I chose to do a little bit of both. I'm coloring in, but I'm also tracing. And one of the things as we kind of continue with mindful drawing and mindful coloring is that we need to kind of pay attention to not only the choices that we make, but also what we refer to as the absence of color or the presence of white, the presence of space. And so you can kind of go ahead and add color as you decide. Again, it's helpful to spin your drawing as you do this and just kind of going ahead and just like when we were drawing, paying attention to what this feels like, noticing the choices that you make. And if at any point you feel like I'm going a little too fast, again, feel free to pause your video and allow yourself to go at whatever pace feels right for you. And like I said, this is my second one that I'm completing. So I'm trying something a little bit different. And so if you are someone who took the time to draw some tangles or some circles on your paper for you to be able to practice, you of course can kind of play around not just with the patterns or the Zentangles that you're drawing, but you can also play around with how you choose to add color. And like I said, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can really just kind of do what you want to maybe play around with, experiment with. And as you continue to work, really zooming into the sensation of drawing and coloring, of tracing, And then the process of kind of stepping back. Now, eventually we will be kind of cutting this out. So don't worry if you don't stay in your circle, that's totally fine. And you can kind of go ahead and continue to add color. And now, like I said, as I'm kind of coming to the end of my coloring, if you feel like you need some more time to continue working, you can always pause the video and then press play when you're ready for the next step. And so what mindful art tells us is that this is a really fun way to pay attention on purpose, but it also has benefits of helping us to calm down, of helping us to relax, of helping us to build our focus, as well as to help us make good decisions. And so there's a variety of different ways that we can mindfully draw. Some people like to call it doodling. And I know that sometimes doodling is something that we can do when we are either trying to fill space, trying to fill some time, trying to fill a page, right? It's a way of kind of allowing our inner creativity to kind of come out, right? So I'm just going to kind of lay side by side here my two different designs for you to be able to kind of take a look at. You'll see here that I use some similar techniques, like my center circle being multiple colors. But then you'll see that I made some differences and some changes to my design. And that's why I encourage you to kind of play around with this and see what you'd like to do. There's lots of different types of shapes that you can fill with just a pencil or a black marker. So if you don't have colored utensils, that's okay. You don't necessarily have to do that as well. And you can also even use the side of your pencil if you wanted to kind of add some shading or adding some dimension to your design, however it is that you would like to do. And so again, although my mindful Zentangle drawing is done, you can take as long as you need to kind of play around with this. And I encourage you to kind of practice as many different drawings as you would like to do. Now for our process and the next video, I'm doing my Zentangles as circles, but understand that you could fill squares, you could fill triangles, you could fill different types of shapes. You could make your name in bubble letters and practice filling in that space with different lines and patterns. You could also do different types of things that you like to draw, like in the book that I was showing you before, which is the Zentangle Under the Sea. And so just for one last moment for us to be able to see here, some of my favorite ones, they chose to draw different types of sea creatures or things that we would find under the sea. And so here they kind of are teaching us some different types of patterns that we could draw. And then as you practice them and filling in the shape, I want to show you this one, which when I show people, they're like, no way, you didn't do that. And I tell them that this was actually one of not only my favorites, but also one of the first ones that I got a chance. And this is what caught me or made me love doing Zentangles so much. So here's a shape of a fish, and none of the dark lines were actually on it. It was just outlined. And then I was able to fill it using some of these Zentangles. And so again, noticing how I used some dark, but I also allowed some light to show through, and how I repeated some of those flower patterns or flower petals like we were doing, and then also used just a black marker in order to do it as well. So that is it for today. If you liked this and you would like to learn more or how to turn this awesome Zentangle into the next part, which is going to be our calm side, that eventually will be turned into a spin drum. So stay tuned, and there will be a following 2 videos that will teach you how to build on your mindful drawing so that you too can create this 2-sided spin drum as a mindfulness tool that you can use to grow your fun, but also to grow your calm.